Okay, welcome everybody to one episode of Cuñado de Izquierdas, a leftist loudmouth, but this time around in English. Why not? Speaking of which, wait a second. A ver, camaradas, este episodio es en inglés. Va a haber más episodios en español. De vez en cuando voy a hacer uno en inglés. Mira, es lo que hay. Algunos de estos temas son globales y hay que explicarlos así, para que gente de todo el mundo se entere. Desgraciadamente, toca la lengua del imperio. ¿Qué le vamos a hacer? Pero oye, aprovechad y aprender un poquito de inglés también, ¿no? De todo se gana.
Leftist loudmouth.
What in English?
You're so clueless.
It's all right.
But check out what my comrades have to say.
Please don't go to Eurovision or Israel or whatever, featuring YouTube's European All-Stars.
European television has been hosting one of the craziest pop music festivals on earth. We call it Eurovision. Some people like it, some people don't. There's the pops, sometimes the rocks, the geeks and the freaks, the cheesy and the absurd. All in one excessive show for all of the masses that some of us in the margins tend to enjoy, mostly with friends and snacks. Okay, maybe some drugs too. They maybe need it. Don't tell anybody. However, this year, we need to stop it. The TV people have gone a little bit too far by, during the last years, inviting one of the countries with the worst record of human rights violations. Like, no kidding, they do it systematically. And the organizers seem not to be bothered about this. Well, people with the minimum of common decency are. A lot.
Eurovision, a Politico? Is it? I don't know, featuring Amelia Jane.
Have you ever heard this repeating chorus of Eurovision not being in any way, political? So have we, but is it really true? Since its inception as a rehash of the Sanremo Music Festival, Eurovision started out with the clear political goal of bringing together a Europe torn by World War II, and the political significance of the festival has been changing throughout the years. Eurovision is organised by the European Broadcasting Union, or the EBU, an organisation that, according to its own mission statement, is devoted to making public service media indispensable. In a world like the one we live in today, with Friedmanites trying to privatise the very water we drink, that in itself is a very politically charged mission. Not that public media in itself is not a worthy cause, but as usual, context is key, because politics have always been a part of Eurovision. This parade of costumes and popular music has seen a lot, from Turkish withdrawal because of woman-on-woman kisses or bearded drag queens, to Austria's protest of the inclusion of Franco's Spain under his national Catholic dictatorship in 1969. Also, do you know which countries never participated in the contest? Well, this being said, many good political issues have been addressed successfully in Eurovision. The contest has gradually gone from a simple song contest for well-dressed high-class show-offs to an LGBT+ event to warm us all up for the Pride Parade. Also, it's had some local political issues, from the regional neighbourly voting squabbles to some things we don't want to put in. But the big stakes are always more geopolitical, from the recent fretting between Russia and Ukraine to helping the Spanish brand of fascism with their opening process. Eurovision these days also serves as a nation branding tool, particularly for countries which formerly sailed under the flag of the USSR. Their relatively recent participation in the contest serves to build and solidify an image of departure from Russian influence and associations with communism. It signals the embrace of more northwestern European, progressive, neoliberal values. And keep this concept in mind for when Paul's gonna talk about Israel and green, pink and art washing. So, the EBU may insist on Eurovision being a non-political event. If we analyse all the moves made by various actors throughout its brief history, it becomes quite apparent that it is a very politically loaded tool for many. You know, as long as nobody's too specific in naming any characters or organisations or political stances.
Everybody's Europe, Europe, everybody's Europe, Europe. You know how that goes. It's an old song. Yeah.
One of those very obvious things about Eurovision is that, contrary to what the brand suggests, participation is not restricted to countries strictly within the geographical circumscription of the European continent. While the first participants in the Swiss town of Lugano in 1956 were just a few European countries that basically needed to get together after World War II, with time the list started expanding, with more participants from the broad European area until in 1973, when a Middle Eastern country joined, Israel. Later on, two more of these inclusions followed, Morocco and Australia. Gestures like including countries outside of Europe in a contest clearly branded as Eurovision does have inevitable political implications. Like, what would you call in Morocco for Euro's favorite campfest? Well, if the year after Lugano in 1956 preceded the Treaty of Rome, what couldn't it do for the Europe-Morocco relationships in 1980? As for Australia, it seems it was meant to be a one-time thing, but SBS keeps coming back. Even this year. Really, Australia?
Enter Israel, the Apartheid state, featuring Kevin Logan.
As we said, the EBU decided to include Israel in the Eurovision Song Contest back in 1973, in the wake of yet another crisis with Lebanon. But what is Israel exactly? Well, to understand that, we need to trace it to the core of the ideology called Zionism. We're talking about a nationalistic movement with the aim to create a Jewish homeland in the territories that Zionists define as the Holy Land. According to this mix of religious and nationalistic criteria, Zionism proposes to create a nation for Jewish people from around the world. The results of this set of ideas have proven to be pretty disastrous. Israel was brought about by the retreat of the British government in 1948 from a war that had lasted 1 year and would last yet another. The war Palestinians refer to as the Nakba, or catastrophe, with hundreds of thousands of Palestinians dead or displaced by organised waves of settlers before and after the war. The UN General Assembly Resolution 181 delivered to Israel over 60% of what used to be Palestinian territory, but it didn't stop there. Military conflicts like the Six-Day War, interventions in other neighbouring countries, the massacres of Sabra and Shatila, illegal settlements in Palestinian land heavily guarded by an army that had never stopped receiving foreign funding, mainly from the United States. The list is pretty extensive. But the goal is way beyond the mere control of territory. Israel is a religious state, where practicing the Jewish religion will grant you a status of first-class citizen at the expense of other groups. They have been practicing ethnic cleansing and human rights violations since their inception, making sure that the international community will look the other way. However, with the rapid development of communications, it's much more difficult to hide crimes against humanity. Say, a system that can facilitate for an army to arrest and torture children as young as 5 years of age can easily have those acts shown for everyone to watch. Everybody can see the IDF and settlers performing such disgusting acts, shooting unarmed protesters outside their territory, evicting farmers from their properties, imposing a de facto apartheid state for those who cave in and live within their borders. For instance, did you know that Ethiopian Jewish people are considered second-class citizens within Israel, which is pretty racist, I think we can all agree. Well, can we remember from history an example of such a wretched place in which people can be discriminated against because of who they are in such a systematic way? Yes, apartheid South Africa. Now, back in the day, how do you think people would have reacted if apartheid South Africa had been invited to join the Eurovision Song Contest? Yeah, they'd have been pretty outraged, and rightly so, because there was a cultural, sporting, and in some cases economic boycott against South Africa, and rightly so. Well, to give you an idea, as of today, the Gaza Strip is a 365 square kilometre de facto concentration camp for Palestinians, who, by the way, let us not forget, are people, just like you and me. Let's see what average people in Israel think about Palestinians, as picked up from the independent journalists at Media Roots.
I think that the Islam is it's a very bad disease, not just for Israel, for all around the world. We can see it. They think they all have to be Islam. If you're not Islam, they will kill you.
The organization is, the thing of it is that Jews shouldn't marry Arabs.
Shouldn't marry Arabs. Why do you feel strongly about that?
Because Jews is a special nation that God gave it to the Jews, and we don't want Jews to get mixed up together with a different nation.
I think Israelis have to take over, and they have to kick them away. It will be much better not to kill them, just to go back to Arab countries.
you can't deal with these people. There's no need to try. There's no need to talk to them. What we can do is when they do enough harm, we retaliate. That's war, and that's the situation that any Jew who lives in Israel has to deal with.
יש לך משהו להגיד, אומרת ש...
על מה?
גם ככה ערבים, מרשימה.
אוקיי. בסדר בעברית? פשוט מאוד, צריך להיכנס לשטחים, וכל מחבל שעושה פיגוע צריך להרוג אותו, צריך להרוג את המחבלים, ואז הם יפחדו ולא יעשו לנו בעיות, והכל יהיה בסדר. הם יהיו בכפרים שלהם, אנחנו נחיה פה, לא צריך להיות ביחד, והכל בסדר.
Pinkwashing, greenwashing, art-washing, or whatever that is, you know, featuring Paul Morrin.
When a political structure like a state that either ignores or directly violates human rights wishes to maintain its power, it tends to divert the public's attention towards symbolic acts that people perform within its structures. This allows the state to continue operating in abhorrent ways, all the while preserving a positive image for the public and for the international community. Let's say, for example, that you put the Israeli army onto a dietary program that encourages eating plant-based foods, and make a huge campaign about how your army is now ostensibly vegan, with massive air quotes here, as you can see. Now, an actual vegan, likely alarmed, will probably respond with something like, "Hey, that's not actually veganism, that's just being plant-based, you silly goose." Through this action you achieve two victories. One, discrediting veganism as a political position, and two, giving one of the world's worst armies in the current political landscape a more humane face. And that would be what's called greenwashing. So when Israel won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1998 with the trans artist Dana International and her hit single Diva, they were strengthening their image towards the international community of Israel being an inclusive, peaceful, and caring society. Yeah, well, tell that to the 27 Palestinians who were killed that year by Israelis. Which, by the way, was a relatively peaceful year, compared to the usual carnage of a conflict that has, for decades, been subjecting impoverished civilians with stones and homemade rockets to a technologically advanced and heavily funded brutal military force. But hey, at least they're cool to trans people, at least symbolically, and that would be what we call pinkwashing. 20 years later, Israel pulled another stunt, with their 2018 Eurovision song entry being a song against bullying, fronted by a bold woman in Japanese-inspired garments with a non-conforming body type. All in all, very progressive. The same year when this happened. And this happened. Yay for Israel taking a stand against bullying. They must have a pretty damn grim sense of humor. The thing is, no matter what Zionists do to try and cover up this human rights disaster, the only way of making it right is to actually stop killing Palestinians, to allow them to recover their families' properties, and eventually their state as it was. A democratic Palestine, where people of all classes, cultures, ethnicities and beliefs can enjoy a peaceful, dignified living, is far better than maintaining the existence of a religious ethno-state that violates human rights as the very principle of its core. It's time to shut down Israel.
We boycott, because what else are we gonna do, right? I don't know.
So, as much as we love sequins and over-the-top performances and special effects on charmingly campy acts put together with the best of intentions, we'd rather see a Eurovision and, by extension, a world that doesn't have monsters like Israel. That's why we call into boycotting Eurovision until this nasty participant has been kicked off the contest. There are many organized movements you can join, and sources for all materials that we're gonna post down there in the description. A good example is the Bds Movement, which consists, as the acronym points out, of boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. While it's questionable that mere boycott doesn't actually make a dent big enough to fix the problem, because Israel's military machines receives funds from many governments and corporations and whatnot, it does affect the public image of Israel in the international community. There are many local branches to organize a network worldwide. We need not to invest money in their products, attention in their campaigns, and energy in their rhetorics. When the human rights of Palestinian people are violated, all of our rights are. Israel needs many propaganda operations to sustain their ethnic cleansing, And they're using Eurovision nowadays, to the point that even Madonna wants to join in. But don't worry, we have Roger Waters, way better musician, not much of a dancer. So we ask of you, this year, don't watch and protest Eurovision. Join your local BDS campaign. Signal boost the information to reach out for the truth of what's happening there now and what's been happening there for years. And please, don't go. So thank you all for watching this video, and thank you to my comrades, to Amelia, to Paul, to Kevin for being awesome and joining in this project. It's kind of weird to ask for stuff, but I kind of have to. I opened myself one of those Patreon thingies to petrify myself into oblivion and to ask for basically money. So please send me some currency if you think, this work I've done has some value in whatever current economical tokens your capitalist overlords think are good, valuable in your area. I don't know, support also my comrades here that have put some serious labor into this video as well, and check out their awesome channels and all the valuable information they have there. A mi gente de habla hispana, deciros que va a haber más vídeos en español, que esto de vez en cuando habrá uno de estos, ya sabéis lo que he dicho al principio, que me he hecho una cuenta de Patreon o como se llame, que os dejo el enlace ahí en la descripción si queréis echarme algo de monedas, de dinero sucio, capitalista, infame, pero que bueno, que intentará pagar para que viva y haga este trabajo tan laborioso que es hacer estos vídeos. Y gracias por la ayuda y nos vemos en el siguiente. See you next time, good people. Thank you all very much.